All right, let's dive right into this explainer breaking down the absolutely explosive 37th entry of the Chronicles of Bane. If you've been following the lore with us, you know this party rarely catches a break, but this particular chapter, it pivots from your standard quest into a desperate, claustrophobic fight for survival in literally a matter of seconds.
We're actually tossing out the usual agenda today. We've got to jump straight into the ticking clock of this massive cinematic crisis. I mean, quote, one spark, one collapse, and all of Hammerdeep could have vanished in fire. That's not just some dramatic flare, right? That was the literal, terrifying reality our party was facing. So let's trace exactly how a lucrative opportunity turned into a near-apocalyptic scenario.
Part 1. The Calm and the Contract. So it all kicked off down in the roaring forges of Hammerdeep, with Goblo Defoe proudly showing off his crude new boomsticks, right before Captain Rurik interrupted with a hastily drawn map.
And the stakes for this royal contract? A cool 25,000 gold pieces. That is a staggering payout just to uncover the fate of the lost Dwarven city of Irondale. They had to figure out if its people still lived or if something else entirely had taken over those dark halls. It instantly set up this highly lucrative, incredibly mysterious premise.
But hey, before they could even start to negotiate or plan their route, everything just went completely sideways. Literally, without warning, the mountain shattered. A violent earthquake thundered through the very foundations of the city.
Which brings us to Part 2, Disaster in Hammerdeep.
Things went from 0 to 100 in a heartbeat. Stone cracked, iron chains rattled everywhere, you've got Dwarven workers screaming as the cavern ceiling is literally breaking apart, dropping massive chunks of debris right onto the forge floor. And worse, the molten iron pits right beneath the suspended walkways are violently churning, threatening to just swallow anyone who loses their footing. The whole forge turned into a deadly, unpredictable trap.
And that leads us to the real nightmare, Part 3, the Black Powder Crisis.
See, the biggest danger wasn't actually the falling rocks or even the magma. It was what was sitting at the lowest level of the city, the black powder stores. Think about it, an underground city packed with contained explosives during a massive earthquake. That is literally the worst-case scenario. If even a single stray spark from that churning forge hit the stores, the entire city of Hammerdeep would be instantly obliterated in a massive chain reaction.
Now, under this kind of insane pressure, you really get to see who cracks and who shines. On one hand, you've got the goblin inventor, Goblet of Foe, going into full-blown panic mode, frantically barking orders to manually load the powder barrels onto rail carts before the tunnels collapse. It was chaotic. But then, you have the wizard Talonor, cool, calm, and collected. He completely bypasses the panic, realizing they have zero time for carts, and goes straight for a bold, magical mitigation strategy. He needed to literally bend the rules of space.
Let's break down exactly how they pull this off in Part 4, Magic, Muscle, and Rescue.
Prioritizing lives over loot, the Bane snapped into action. Here is step-by-step how you defuse a mountain-sized bomb. First, Talonor executes this daring magical bypass. He tosses a bag of holding to Ord, their little reptilian rogue mascot, telling him to stuff it full of barrels. Second, Talonor busts out this mysterious magical key and jams it into the powder room door. And third, he carves open a radiant, glowing portal straight to Affeldern. Now, obviously, Goblo lost his mind at the idea of shoving highly volatile explosives through a magic door to an unknown destination. But with the ceiling caving in, fear definitely overruled his pride.
And the sheer efficiency here is just wild. They managed to secure all 20 of the highly volatile barrels out of the danger zone. 16 of them were shoved right through that glowing doorway to Affeldern, while Ord somehow managed to cram the remaining 4 directly into his bag of holding. Just like that, the threat of a catastrophic secondary explosion was completely neutralized.
But taking care of the powder was only half the battle. Every single second of this timeline mattered in the evacuation. Right around the 30-second mark, Cedric literally transforms into a massive moorbounder. In this huge, terrifyingly fast feline form, he hauls the last of the barrels and instantly pivots to carrying trapped Dwarven workers safely out of the collapsing area. And as the forge is sealing off under these enormous slabs of rock, Roberto and Thane are charging right into the thick of it without a second of hesitation. Their dynamic is just incredible to watch. Thane is using his magic to literally levitate massive boulders off the ground, while Roberto is relying on sheer, brute physical strength and pure willpower to drag the injured dwarfs free before they're crushed.
It is the ultimate showcase of how a well-balanced party combines magic and muscle to completely turn the tide in a crisis.
Which brings us to the final push. Part 5. The Goat Cart Cliffhanger.
With the powder room cleared and the workers rescued, the survivors pile into these rail carts, pulled by massive mountain goats for a desperate, spiraling climb out of the collapsing city. They're heading up, into the dark, probably assuming the worst is behind them. But nope, the mountain showed absolutely no mercy. Another violently massive tremor shook the earth.
Just picture this. You're flying down the tracks, and suddenly a massive chunk of stone tears free from the cavern's ceiling, plummeting directly at your cart. The goats swerve at the very last possible second, barely dodging total destruction. But the impact is devastating. It violently shatters a cartwheel. Now they are tilting precariously over the abyss, surrounded by the deafening sound of crumbling stone and screaming dwarves. And that right there is exactly where the chronicle leaves us dangling. With a shattered wheel and a falling mountain, who actually survives the dark? We're going to have to wait for the next chapter to find out. But honestly, the tactical brilliance they showed in Hammerdeep, juggling the Irondale contract while mitigating an absolute disaster, proves exactly why the Gnollsbane are legendary. So what do you think? How on earth are they getting out of this one? Chew on that for a bit, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.